Uganda's political landscape is often shaped not by single decisions, but by how different ideas quietly connect. One such connection is now drawing attention: the relationship between the proposed parliamentary election of the president, championed by Norbert and the controversial protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, championed by Hamson Bois. At first glance, the two appear unrelated, and one is a constitutional idea about how leaders are chosen, the other a legal framework about foreign influence. But when placed side by side, a deeper pattern begins to emerge. Could the Sovereignty Bill be more than a defensive law? Could it be laying the groundwork for a future political system where power is centralized and tightly controlled? The idea that Parliament, rather than the general public, should elect the president is not new. Norbert has previously floated this model as a way to streamline governance and reduce the cost and tension of national elections. But such a shift would fundamentally transform democracy in Uganda. Instead of millions of citizens voting directly, the decision would rest in the hands of a few hundred members of parliament. That change introduces a critical vulnerability, that is influence. In a direct election, influencing the outcome requires reaching millions of voters, a complex, expensive, and uncertain process. In a parliamentary system, however, the focus narrows dramatically. Roughly 500 MPs would become the decisive actors. From a strategic standpoint, that is a much smaller and more manageable group to influence, whether through lobbying, incentives, or in worst-case scenarios, covert financial backing. This is where my analysis becomes particularly sharp. If power shifts to parliament, then parliament itself becomes the primary battlefield. The protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 introduces strict controls on foreign funding, broad definitions of influence, and severe penalties for non-compliance. Officially, it's about shielding Uganda from external interference, but in the context of a parliamentary presidency, it takes on a new dimension. It effectively turns financial influence into a criminal risk. If an MP is suspected of receiving foreign-backed support to influence their political decisions, the law provides grounds for investigation, prosecution, and even asset seizure. In theory, this could deter external actors from attempting to buy influence within parliament. In practice, it also centralizes who is allowed to influence MPs and who is not. One of the most consequential features of the bill is not just restriction, but control. Foreign funding above certain threshold requires approval, and that approval sits within the executive. This creates a gatekeeping system. If applied in a future where MPs elect the president, it would mean that external actors are effectively locked out of influencing parliament. But it also means that internal actors, particularly those within the state, retain unmatched leverage. The result is a political environment where influence does not disappear. It is simply consolidated. The Mao proposal has not been fully implemented, but it remains alive in Uganda's political discourse, and it is not universally popular. Many citizens see direct voting as a fundamental democratic right. If such a proposal were revived, it would likely trigger strong reactions from civil society, activists, and political opposition. Here again, the Sovereignty Bill becomes relevant. Its broad provisions on foreign influence and economic sabotage could be used to restrict the very organizations that would mobilize public resistance. Advocacy campaigns, civic education drives, and even policy critics could fall under scrutiny if linked to foreign funding. In this sense, The bill does not just regulate influence, it shapes the space in which opposition can exist. When viewed together, the two ideas, the parliamentary presidency and the sovereignty bill, form a coherent system. Power shifts from the general public to parliament. External funding into political processes is tightly restricted. Oversight of influence is centralized within the executive. This creates what can be described as a closed loop of power. Decision making becomes more contained, influence becomes more controlled, and unpredictability is reduced. From a governance perspective, this may appear efficient. From a democratic perspective, it raises serious questions. It is difficult to prove direct intent. Governments rarely present policies as part of a broader political design. Officially, the sovereignty bill stands alone as a defensive mechanism, but timing and structure matter. The emergence of a law that tightly controls financial influence, alongside a proposal that concentrates electoral power in a smaller group, is unlikely to be entirely coincidental. Whether by design or by alignment of interest, the two reinforce each other. One secures the system, the other defines it. Ultimately, this is not just about one bill or one proposal. It's about the direction of Uganda's political revolution. Is the country moving toward a model where power is more centralized, more insulated, and more controlled? Or are these simply parallel developments responding to different challenges? My analysis raises a critical point. Laws are not just about what they say, they are about what they enable. If the sovereignty bill acts as a firewall, the question becomes, what exactly is it protecting? The nation or the architecture of power itself? The link between the protection of sovereignty bill 2026 and the Mao proposal may never be officially acknowledged, but the logic connecting them is difficult to ignore. A parliamentary presidency without strict control over financial influence would be vulnerable. A sovereignty law without a concentrated political system would be less consequential, and we talked about this earlier. Together they form a system that is tighter, more predictable, and potentially less open. Whether this represents strategic foresight or democratic risk depends on perspective. But one thing is certain, the conversation is far from over.